The battle above Thalanara had become the largest space conflict in galactic history. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species filled the sky, their weapons lighting up the darkness like deadly fireworks. But Jake could see it all clearly now, through the vast network of consciousness that he and Princess Zarathel had become part of. He was no longer just one person. He was Jake Morrison, but he was also part of something greater. Through the collective mind, he could feel every thought, every fear, every hope of the transformed beings who had joined them. The Cronin fleet is preparing to bombard the planet, Princess Zarathel said, her voice somehow speaking directly into the minds of everyone in the network. She was still herself, but expanded beyond the limits of any single individual. Jake felt the hostile intentions of the enemy commanders like dark storms on the horizon. General Kethmore's hatred burned bright and cold. The Cronin Admiral Vextar's fear drove him to desperate measures. They were planning to destroy the entire planet rather than allow the transformation to spread further. "We cannot let them kill billions of innocent people," Jake said, his enhanced consciousness reaching out across space to touch the minds of every being in the battle. Through the network, he felt the agreement of hundreds of transformed individuals. Admiral Conway, his military experience now enhanced by collective wisdom. Captain Hayes, her leadership abilities amplified beyond anything possible for a single person. Dr. Kane, his scientific knowledge expanded to encompass the biology of dozens of species, but it was not just humans and Valeri anymore. The transformation had spread to willing members of other species as well. Young Cronin engineers who had grown tired of building weapons. Deltan traders who had always believed in cooperation over conflict. Even a few members of the mysterious ethereal race had chosen to join them. "We offer you one final chance," Jake said, his voice somehow reaching every ship in the enemy fleet. "Join us willingly and help us build something better than this endless cycle of war and fear." General Kethmore's response came crackling over the communication channels. "Never. I would rather die than see my people polluted by alien contamination." Admiral Vextar was equally hostile. "The Cronin Empire does not negotiate with abominations. Fire all weapons. Burn this world to ash." Jake felt the collective consciousness make its decision. They would not allow innocents to die, but they would also not kill their enemies if it could be avoided. What they were about to do had never been attempted before, but the knowledge of the architects flowed through them, showing them the way. "Reach out," Princess Zarathel said to the network. "Touch every mind that is willing to be touched." Jake felt his consciousness expand beyond anything he had thought possible. Through the network, hundreds of transformed beings joined their thoughts with his. Together, they reached across space to every ship in the attacking fleet. Some minds were too filled with hate and fear to accept their touch, but others, especially the younger crew members, felt the presence of the collective consciousness and were curious rather than afraid. One by one, they began to understand what the transformation really offered, not the loss of individual identity, but the expansion of it. Not weakness, but strength beyond imagination. Not the end of their species, but the beginning of something greater. A Cronin weapons officer named Grix felt the collective consciousness touch his mind and suddenly understood that he did not have to spend his life destroying things. He could help build instead. With tears streaming down his scaled face, he chose to join them. A young Valari pilot named Thais had been fighting her own people for years, never knowing why the war had to continue. When the network touched her thoughts, she felt the peace and purpose she had been searching for all her life. Even some humans from the patrol ships realized they had been on the wrong side. Lieutenant Marcus Webb felt the love and acceptance of the collective consciousness and understood that his fear of change had been holding back not just himself, but his entire species. The transformation spread through the enemy fleet like light driving away darkness. Ship after ship stopped firing and turned to join the growing collective. Their crews were still individuals, but they were also part of something larger and more beautiful than any single person could achieve alone. General Kethmore watched in horror as his own fleet began defecting. "This is madness!" he screamed over the communication channels. "They are stealing our souls!" But Admiral Vextar was beginning to understand something different. As the collective, consciousness gently touched his mind. He felt for the first time in his life the possibility of peace. The Cronin Empire had been at war for so long that most of its people had forgotten what it felt like to not be afraid. "Perhaps," the old Cronin admiral said slowly, "we have been the ones who were mad." He gave the order for his remaining ships to stand down. General Kethmore found himself alone with only a handful of vessels still under his command. His hatred burned brighter than ever, but now it was mixed with desperation and fear. "If I cannot stop you," he said, "then I will destroy you all." His flagship began charging its most powerful weapon, a planet-killing device that would turn Thalnara into a cloud of radioactive dust. Jake felt the weapon powering up through his enhanced senses. "He is going to fire on the planet," he said to the network. "Then we stop him," Princess Zarathel replied. But instead of attacking General Kethamore's ship, the collective consciousness did something unexpected. They reached out to the general himself, not with force, but with compassion. Through the network, Jake felt Princess Zarathel's memories of her old friend and teacher. General Kethamore had not always been consumed by hatred. Long ago, he had been a young officer who truly cared about his people. The years of war and loss had twisted him into something he had never meant to become. "Kethmore," Princess Zarathel said, her voice somehow reaching him across the void of space. "I remember when you taught me to fly. You said that a good pilot must always know when to change course." For a moment, the general's hatred wavered. Through the collective consciousness, Jake felt the old soldier's pain and confusion. He had been fighting for so long that he had forgotten what he was fighting for. "You are not my student anymore," General Kethmore said, but his voice was no longer filled with rage. "You are something else entirely." "I am still Zarathel," she replied gently. "But I am also more than I was before, and so could you be if you choose it." The weapon on the general's ship continued to charge, but Jake could feel the old soldier's resolve cracking. The collective consciousness did not force itself on him. Instead, it simply offered him what everyone else had been offered, the choice to become something greater. General Kethmore's hand hovered over the firing control. With one press of a button, he could destroy everything Jake and Princess Zarathel had built. But he could also feel the peace and purpose that flowed through the network of transformed minds. "What will happen to us?" he asked quietly. "What will happen to our traditions, our history, our identity?" "They will become part of something larger," Jake said. "Your strength will help make us stronger. Your wisdom will help guide us. Your love for your people will help us protect everyone." The general was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he powered down his weapon. "I am too old to change," he said sadly. "No one is too old," Princess Zarathel replied. "Change is what life is all about." General Kethamore closed his eyes and opened his mind to the collective consciousness. Jake felt the old soldier's thoughts join the network, bringing with him decades of tactical knowledge and, surprisingly, a deep well of love for his people that had been hidden beneath years of bitterness. The transformation of General Kethmore marked the end of the battle, but it was also the beginning of something much larger. Across the galaxy, news of what had happened at Thalnara spread quickly. Some species reacted with fear and hostility, but others were curious about this new form of existence. Within months, the collective consciousness had grown to include millions of individuals from dozens of species. They called themselves the New Confluence, and they were everything the architects had hoped their experiment would eventually become. Jake and Princess Zarathel, now transformed beyond their original forms, but still recognizably themselves, worked together to activate other architect facilities across the galaxy. Each new discovery brought more species into the fold, not through conquest, but through choice. The transformation was never forced on anyone. Each individual had to make the decision for themselves. But those who chose to join found themselves part of something beautiful and powerful and eternal. Dr. Kane, his consciousness now expanded to encompass the scientific knowledge of hundreds of species, made a final entry in his research log. The human capacity for self-sacrifice, demonstrated by Lieutenant Jake Morrison when he gave his blood to save an alien princess, has proven to be the catalyst for the greatest evolutionary leap in galactic history. What began as one person's desire to save a single life has become the foundation for a new form of existence that transcends the limitations of any individual species. The collective consciousness continued to grow and evolve, always guided by the values that Jake had shown in that first moment of selfless sacrifice. They protected the weak, helped the struggling, and offer. The ancient Valari homeworld of Thalnara hung in space like a jewel made of blue crystal and silver light. Jake had never seen anything so beautiful or so mysterious. The entire planet seemed to glow with an inner fire that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. "I never thought I would see it again," Princess Zarathel said softly as they stood together on the bridge of the horizon. Through their mental connection, Jake could feel her mixture of joy and sadness. "My people abandoned this world. 10,000 years ago when the wars began, they said it was cursed." "Why cursed?" Jake asked, though part of him already knew the answer through their shared consciousness. "Because this is where the first civilization lived," she replied. "The beings who created us. The myths say they disappeared overnight, leaving behind only empty cities and strange machines that no one could understand." Dr. Kane looked up from his scanner readings with excitement. "The entire planet is covered with structures made from materials we cannot identify, and the energy readings are off the charts. Whatever technology is down there, it is still active after thousands of years." Admiral Conway joined them at the observation window. "Are you sure this is where we will find answers?" Princess Zarathel nodded. "The ancient texts speak of a place where the truth of our origins lies waiting. The Temple of Beginnings, built by those who shaped our DNA and gave us our purpose." Jake felt a strange pulling sensation, as if something on the planet below was calling to him. Through the network of transformed minds that now connected nearly 200 people across multiple ships, he could sense others feeling the same pull. "We are not the only ones coming here," he said, his enhanced senses detecting ships approaching from multiple directions. "I can feel other minds, some friendly, some very hostile." Captain Hayes checked the long-range sensors. "Confirmed. We have at least 20 ships converging on this system, including General Kethamore's flagship and a full Cronin battle fleet." They followed us here, Admiral Conway said grimly. They intend to end this once and for all. Then we had better find those answers quickly, Princess Zarathel said. Take us down to the surface. The shuttle journey through Thalnara's atmosphere was like flying through a dream. The air itself seemed to shimmer with colors that had no names, and the ruins of the ancient cities stretched as far as the eye could see. Towers of crystal reached toward the sky, connected by bridges that looked like frozen lightning. Jake felt his transformed senses overwhelmed by the beauty and strangeness of it all. But underneath the wonder, he sensed something else. A presence, ancient and vast, watching them approach. They landed near the largest structure, a pyramid made of some material that seemed to be part crystal, part metal, and part living tissue. It pulsed with the same inner light as the planet. Itself, the Temple of Beginnings, Princess Zarathel whispered. As they approached the entrance, the massive doors opened by themselves. Inside, the walls were covered with symbols that seemed to move and change as Jake watched them. But somehow, he could understand what they meant. The story of creation, he said, reading the flowing text. Not just of the Valeri, but of dozens of species across the galaxy. Dr. Kane was frantically recording everything with his instruments. This is incredible. The symbols are actually changing to match whoever is reading them. They are showing us the history in a language we can understand. They walked deeper into the temple, following corridors that seemed to go on forever. Along the way, they passed chambers filled with strange machines and tanks containing what looked like genetic material from countless different species. They were scientists, Princess Zarathel said with growing understanding. The first civilization. They were conducting the greatest experiment in galactic history. At the center of the temple, they found a vast chamber dominated by a single, glowing sphere suspended in mid-air. As they approached, the sphere began to project images around them, showing the history of the galaxy in stunning detail. Jake watched in amazement as the story unfolded. Millions of years ago, a race called the Architects had seeded the galaxy with life. But not random life. Each species had been carefully designed with specific genetic markers, waiting for the right moment to activate. We were all part of the plan, he said, understanding flooding through him. Humans, Valari, even the Cronins. We were meant to eventually come together and become something greater. The sphere pulsed brighter, and suddenly Jake heard a voice speaking directly into his mind. It was ancient and wise, but also sad. "Young ones," the voice said, "you have arrived at last. I am the eternal guide, the final guardian of the architect. Legacy." Princess Zarathel stepped forward. "You are one of the first civilization?" "I am what remains," the voice replied. "An artificial intelligence created to watch over the experiment until the time of joining arrived. You, hybrid child, of two species, are the key that unlocks the next phase of galactic evolution." Jake felt the presence examining him through their connection. "But the experiment was never completed," he said. "What happened to the architects?" Images flowed around them showing a cosmic disaster beyond imagination, a wave of dark energy, sweeping across the galaxy, destroying entire star systems. The architects fleeing in their great ships, leaving behind only their genetic legacy and the promise of eventual return. "The Devourers came," the Eternal Guide explained. "Beings from beyond our reality who consume life itself. The architects fought them for 10 million years before being forced to retreat to dimensions beyond this one. And now?" Princess Zarathel asked. Now the Devourers have found our galaxy again, the guide said ominously. They are coming, drawn by the growing network of consciousness you have created. Your transformation, while beautiful, shines like a beacon across dimensional space. Jake felt a chill of fear run through the network of transformed minds. We are calling them here? Yes, but you are also the galaxy's only hope of survival, the guide replied. The individual species of this galaxy cannot stand against the Devourers. Only by joining together, as you have begun to do, can they be defeated. The chamber suddenly shook as explosions echoed from outside. Through the temple's crystal walls, Jake could see ships fighting in the sky above. General Kethamore has arrived, Princess Zarathel said, sensing the familiar mind through their connection. As have the Cronins, Jake added, feeling the hostile thoughts of their enemies. Captain Hayes spoke into her communicator. Admiral Conway, we are under heavy attack. The temple is surrounded. Admiral Conway's voice crackled back. Hold your position. We are engaging the enemy fleet, but we are outnumbered 3-1. The Eternal Guide's presence grew more urgent. You must choose now, young ones. The knowledge of the architects is here, waiting to be claimed. You can use it to complete the transformation, to join all willing minds into a collective consciousness capable of facing any threat. But, Jake asked, sensing there was more, but the process will change you beyond recognition, the guide admitted. You will become something greater than human or Valari, something that has never existed before in this reality. Through their connection, Jake felt Princess Zarathel's determination and love. She was willing to make that sacrifice to save the galaxy, and he realized that he was too. What do we have to do? He asked. The sphere pulsed brighter, and suddenly Jake's mind was flooded with information. The complete genetic codes of hundreds of species, the technology to reshape matter at the molecular level, the knowledge of how to bind consciousness across vast distances, but most importantly, he learned the truth about the network they had been building. It was not just a connection between transformed individuals. It was the beginning of a new form of life that could exist across multiple dimensions, capable of facing threats that would destroy any single species. The temple shook again as more explosions rocked the area outside. Through the network, Jake could feel the minds of their allies fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. We are running out of time, Princess Zarathel said. Jake made his decision. Do it, he said to the Eternal Guide. Give us the power to save them all. The sphere exploded with light, and Jake felt his consciousness expand beyond anything he had ever imagined. He was no longer just Jake Morrison, human medic. He was part of something vast and beautiful and terrifying. Through the network, he felt Princess Zarathel undergoing the same transformation. Her individual identity remained, but it was now part of a greater whole. Together, they reached out to every transformed mind in their network. Join us, they called across space. Become what you were always meant to be. One by one, the network members made their choice. Admiral Conway fighting desperately to protect the temple. Captain Hayes coordinating the defense with impossible skill. Dr. Kane. His scientific mind expanded beyond the limits of any single species. Even some of their enemies felt the call. Young Cronin soldiers who were tired of endless war. Valary rebels who had always dreamed of something better. Humans who believed in the promise of a brighter future. The transformation spread like wildfire, creating a collective consciousness. that spanned the entire star system, and with that consciousness came power beyond imagination. Jake opened his eyes and looked at Princess Zarathel. She was still recognizably herself, but she was also something more. Something that 2 weeks had passed since the UES Horizon fled into the asteroid fields near Kepler Station. Jake stood in the ship's observation deck, watching the massive rocks float silently through space. Each asteroid was as big as a city, and they moved in a slow, deadly dance around each other. "Still cannot sleep?" Princess Zarathel asked as she joined him at the window. Her presence always made Jake feel calmer, but lately, that connection between them had grown stronger. Sometimes he could feel her emotions as clearly as his own. "Every time I close my eyes, I can sense them," Jake said. "Ships hunting us. Angry. Voices calling for our capture. The fear is spreading faster than we are." Princess Zarathel nodded sadly. Through their shared connection, Jake felt her worry and guilt. "My people have declared me dead," she said. "General Kethmore announced that the real princess was killed by human contamination. He says the creature traveling with you is just a monster wearing her face." "And humans are not much better," Jake replied. "Dr. Kane showed me the news reports from Earth. Half the people think I am a hero who will help humanity evolve. The other half think I am a disease that will destroy our species." The door to the observation deck opened, and Captain Hayes entered with a grim expression. "We have a problem," she said. "Long-range sensors are picking up multiple fleets converging on our position. Cronin Empire ships, Valari military vessels, and even some human patrol craft." Jake felt his enhanced senses automatically scan the space around them. He could somehow detect the approaching ships even though they were still light years away. It was like feeling storm clouds gathering on the horizon. "How many?" Princess Zarathel asked. "At least 50 ships," Captain Hayes said. "The largest combined fleet in galactic history. They are calling it Operation Cleansing Fire." Admiral Conway's voice came through the ship's communication system. "All senior staff to the bridge immediately. We have decisions to make." They made their way to the bridge, where the main screen showed a tactical display of the approaching fleets. Red dots representing enemy ships formed a tightening circle around their position. Jake noticed that his enhanced eyesight could see details on the display that others missed. "The good news is that we have allies," Admiral Conway said as they gathered around the central table. "Several human colony worlds have declared their support for us. Some Valari rebels are also on our side. But we are still greatly outnumbered." Dr. Kane pulled up a new display showing genetic analysis data. "I have been studying the crew members who are showing signs of transformation. The changes are accelerating. Lieutenant Ross can now lift objects twice her body weight. Engineer Davis solved a warp drive problem that has puzzled our best scientists for years." "How many people are affected?" Admiral Conway asked. 17 so far, Dr. Kane said. "All volunteers who asked to spend time working closely with Jake and Princess Zarathel. The transformation only seems to work on people who truly want it." Jake felt a strange sensation as Princess Zarathel's mind touched his. Through their connection, he could suddenly sense every person on the ship. The 17 who were changing felt different, brighter somehow. Their minds were more open and connected. "I can feel them," Jake said with wonder. "All the people who are changing. We are becoming linked together somehow." Princess Zarathel closed her eyes and extended her consciousness further. "Not just on this ship," she said. "There are others. Scattered across the galaxy, humans and Valeri who heard about us and somehow triggered their own transformations. That is impossible, Dr. Kane said. The process requires direct contact with your transformed biology. No, Princess Zarathel said, opening her eyes with excitement. It requires direct contact with the idea of transformation. Belief can be just as powerful as biology. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The tactical officer called out, "Multiple contacts dropping out of warp, Cronin destroyers bearing down on our position." Through the bridge windows, Jake could see the massive Cronin ships appearing like dark shadows against the stars. They were ugly vessels, all angles and weapon ports, built for war rather than exploration. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced. The main screen changed to show a Cronin commander. The alien was large and reptilian, with scaled skin and cold yellow eyes. When he spoke, his voice was like rocks grinding together. "Human vessel. You will surrender the contaminated beings immediately. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your ship and all aboard." Admiral Conway stepped forward. "This is Admiral Rex Conway of the United Earth Fleet. The people under my protection are not contaminated. They are the next step in galactic evolution." The Cronin commander laughed, a harsh sound like breaking glass. "Evolution? You call this abomination evolution? We have seen what happens to species that allow such contamination. They lose their identity, their strength, their very souls." "What are you talking about?" Captain Hayes asked. The Cronin commander's expression grew darker. "Long ago, my people encountered beings like yours, shapeshifters who could change others with a touch. They promised us power and unity. Instead, they nearly destroyed us. We will not allow that mistake to be repeated." The transmission ended, and immediately the Cronin ships began firing. Bright beams of energy lanced through space toward the horizon. "Evasive maneuvers," Admiral Conway ordered. "Get us deeper into the asteroid field." The ship shook as it accelerated, weaving between the massive floating rocks. Jake felt his enhanced senses kick in, and suddenly he could predict where the enemy fire would strike before it happened. "Turn left now," he called out, and Captain Hayes followed his instinct. A massive energy beam passed harmlessly through the space where they had been a second before. "How did you know?" she asked. "I can feel their targeting systems," Jake said, surprised by his own ability. "Like sensing someone's intention before they act." Princess Zarathel joined her consciousness with his, and together they could sense the entire battle. The Cronin ships were powerful but clumsy. The asteroid field gave the smaller human vessel an advantage, but not for long. "More ships coming out of warp," the tactical officer reported. "Valeri cruisers, human patrol vessels. We are completely surrounded." Jake felt despair creeping into his heart, but then Princess Zarathel's determination flowed through their connection, strengthening him. "We cannot run forever," she said, "and we cannot hide what we are becoming." "What are you thinking, Admiral?" Conway asked. Princess Zarathel looked at Jake, and he understood her plan instantly through their mental link. It was dangerous, maybe impossible, but it was their only chance. "We fight," Jake said, "but not the way they expect." He concentrated, reaching out through their connection to the 17 crew members who were undergoing transformation. One by one, he felt their minds join his and Princess Zarathel's in a growing network of consciousness. "Jake, what are you doing?" Dr. Kane asked with concern. "Showing them what evolution really means," Jake replied. The network of transformed minds began working together, sharing knowledge and abilities faster than any computer. Lieutenant Ross, whose strength had been enhanced, found herself understanding complex mathematics. Engineer Davis, who had solved the warp drive problem, suddenly gained the reflexes of a fighter pilot. Through their shared consciousness, they began to coordinate the ship's systems with perfect precision. The engines responded to their combined will. The weapons fired with impossible accuracy, and the shields adapted to incoming attacks before the enemy had even fired. The Cronin ships found themselves facing an opponent that seemed to know their every move before they made it. Energy beams that should have destroyed the human vessel instead passed harmlessly by as the ship moved in ways that defied normal physics. "Impossible," came the Cronin commander's voice over the communication system. "No single ship can outmaneuver an entire fleet." "We are not a single ship," Princess Zarathel replied, her voice somehow reaching every vessel in the attacking fleet. "We are something new. Something you do not understand." The horizon emerged from the asteroid field, moving faster than any ship its size should be able to go. The combined consciousness of the transformed crew had found ways to push the engines beyond their normal limits without destroying them. But instead of fleeing, they turned to face the enemy fleet. "Admiral," Captain Hayes said with worry, "what are we doing?" "Trusting in evolution," Admiral Conway said quietly. Jake felt the power of the network flowing through him. 17 minds working as one, guided by the hybrid consciousness he shared with Princess Zarathel. They reached out to the attacking ships not with weapons, but with their thoughts. Some of the enemy crews were too filled with hate and fear to be reached. But others, especially the younger ones, felt the touch of the hybrid consciousness and were curious rather than afraid. One by one, Jake felt new minds joining their network. A young Cronin engineer who had always wondered if there might be a better way than constant war. A Valari pilot who had grown tired of fighting her own people. Even a few humans from the patrol ships who realized they were on the wrong side. "They are defecting," the tactical officer said with amazement. "Ships are breaking away from the enemy formations." The transformation spread like ripples on a pond. Each new mind that joined the network helped other. 3 days had passed since Jake saved Princess Zarathel with his blood. They were now safe aboard the human ship UES Horizon, floating in space above Xerion Prime. But something was very wrong with both of them. Jake sat on the edge of his bed in the medical bay, staring at his hands. They looked normal, but they did not feel normal. Yesterday, he had accidentally crushed a metal cup just by picking it up. This morning, he had jumped over a table without even thinking about it. "The changes are getting stronger," Dr. Kane said, looking at the test results on his computer screen. The doctor had been running tests on Jake every few hours since they returned to the ship. "Your muscle density has increased by 40%. Your reflexes are 3 times faster than normal." "Human levels. What does that mean?" Jake asked, flexing his fingers and watching the muscles move under his skin. "It means you are becoming something new," Dr. Kane said quietly. "The Valari genetic material has somehow joined with your human DNA. I have never seen anything like it." Jake stood up and walked to the window. Below them, the red planet turned slowly, still covered in the smoke and fire of war. "How is the princess doing?" "Even stranger than you," Dr. Kane admitted. "Her people's healers say she has abilities now that no Valari has ever possessed. She can move objects with her mind and speak to people without using words." At that moment, the medical bay door opened, and Princess Zarathel walked in. She looked different than before. Her blue skin had a new glow to it, and her silver markings moved constantly like liquid mercury. but her eyes were the biggest change. They still looked like deep black pools, but now Jake could see tiny lights dancing, in them like stars. "Hello, Jake," she said, and her voice seemed to come from inside his head instead of his ears. "Did you just—" Jake started to ask. "Speak to your mind?" "Yes," she said with a smile. "It is one of my new gifts. I can also do this." She looked at the metal chair beside Jake's bed. Without touching it, the chair rose into the air and floated gently across the room. Dr. Kane made excited notes on his tablet. "Incredible! The human emotional resilience combined with Valeri mental abilities has created something completely new." Princess Zarathel set the chair down carefully. "It is not just mental abilities," she said. "I can think in ways I never could before. Problems that seemed impossible now have clear solutions. I understand technology that my people have struggled with for centuries." "The princess has been helping our engineers improve our ship systems," Captain Hayes said as she entered the medical bay. The captain looked tired and worried. "In 3 days, she has made our engines 20% more efficient." Jake felt a strange sensation, like someone was gently touching his thoughts. He looked at Princess Zarathel and somehow knew she was the source of the feeling. "I can sense your emotions," she said softly. "You are afraid of what you are becoming." Jake nodded. "I do not feel human anymore. Yesterday, I moved so fast that I left burn marks on the deck, and I can see things differently now. The ship's radiation that should be invisible, I can see it like colored light." "You are still human," Princess Zarathel said, and this time she spoke with her voice instead of her mind. "But you are also something more. We both are." Dr. Kane cleared his throat. "There is something else you both need to know. I have been studying the old Valerie texts that the princess brought with her. There is a prophecy about something called the joining of stars." Princess Zarathel turned to look at him, her star-filled eyes growing wide. "You found references to the ancient writings?" "More than references," Dr. Kane said, showing them his tablet. The screen showed strange symbols that seemed to move and change. "According to these texts, your people have been waiting for this moment for thousands of years. A time when Valeri would join with another species to become something greater." "That is impossible," Princess Zarathel said. "Those are just old stories, myths to give hope during dark times." "Maybe not," Captain Hayes said grimly. "We have been receiving messages from across the galaxy. News of what happened here is spreading fast, and not everyone is happy about it." She activated the main screen in the medical bay. Images appeared, showing news reports from different alien worlds. Jake could not understand most of the languages, but the tone was clear. Fear, anger, and concern. "The Galactic Confederation is calling an emergency meeting," Captain Hayes continued. "They want to discuss what they call the hybrid threat. Several species are demanding that both of you be turned over for study." Jake felt his new strength surge through his body as anger filled him. The metal bed frame began to bend under his grip. "They want to study us like animals?" Princess Zarathel placed her hand on his shoulder, and instantly Jake felt calmer. The anger faded, replaced by a warm sense of peace. "Another new ability," she said with a sad smile. "I can share emotions now, help others feel what they need to feel. But Jake is right to be angry. My own people are just as frightened." Dr. Kane pulled up another screen showing messages from Zirion Prime. "General Kethamore has declared both of you to be abominations against nature. He is calling for all true Valari to join him in destroying what he calls the corruption of our pure blood. So we have enemies everywhere, Jake said. Not everywhere, a new voice said from the doorway. They turned to see Admiral Rex Conway entering the medical bay. The Admiral was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. Jake knew him by reputation as one of the most respected officers. "In the human fleet, Admiral Conway," Captain Hayes said, standing at attention. "I was not expecting you." "I came as soon as I heard," Admiral Conway said. He looked at Jake with interest. "Your father saved my life once, son. Bill Morrison was the best soldier I ever served with. I owe your family a debt." Jake's father had died in a mining accident when Jake was young. He had not known that admiral. Conway knew him. "What are your orders, sir?" Captain Hayes asked. Admiral Conway was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "My official orders are to detain Lieutenant Morrison and Princess Zarathel for transfer to Confederation scientists, but I seem to have developed a hearing problem. I cannot quite make out what those orders say." Captain Hayes smiled back. "Hearing problems can be very inconvenient, sir." "Indeed," Admiral Conway said. "Fortunately, I have decided that this ship needs to conduct a thorough exploration of the Outer Rim, far away from Confederation space. For several months." Princess Zarathel stepped forward. "You would risk your career to protect us?" "My dear princess," Admiral Conway said, "I have been in space for 30 years. I have seen wonders and horrors that most people cannot imagine. But I have never seen anything as important as what you two represent." "What do we represent?" Jake asked. Admiral Conway looked out the window at the stars. "Hope," he said simply. "The possibility that all the different species in this galaxy might one day stop fighting and start working together. If your transformation can spread, if others can become like you, then maybe we can build something better than what we have now." Dr. Kane looked up from his tablet. "Admiral, there is something you should know. The transformation might already be spreading." Everyone turned to look at him. "I have been monitoring the crew since we returned from the planet," Dr. Kane continued. "Several people who spent time near Jake and the princess are showing minor changes. Enhanced reflexes, improved problem-solving abilities, resistance to radiation. The effects are small but measurable." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "We are changing other people just by being near them?" "It appears so," Dr. Kane said. "But only people who want to change. The effects seem to require willing acceptance on some level." Princess Zarathel closed her eyes and seemed to be listening to something only she could hear. "I can sense it too," she said. "There are minds all around us that are becoming more open, more connected. It is beautiful, but also frightening." "Why frightening?" Captain Hayes asked. "Because if General Kethmore and the Confederation learn that we can influence others just by being near them, they will do anything to stop us," Princess Zarathel said. "They will see us as a disease that must be cured, or a weapon that must be controlled." Admiral Conway nodded grimly. "Then we had better make sure they do not catch us. Captain Hayes, set course for the Kepler system. We will hide in the asteroid fields while we figure out our next move." As the ship began to move away from Zerion Prime, Jake looked out at the stars and wondered what they had started. He had only wanted to save one life, but now it seemed like they might be changing the entire galaxy. He felt Princess Zarathel's mind touch his again, sharing her thoughts and feelings. Together, they were stronger than either could be alone, but they were also more dangerous. The real question was whether they would use that power to help the galaxy or destroy it. Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his face as he checked his medical supplies one more time. The young medic sat in the back of the transport ship, watching the red desert planet grow larger through the small window. Zirion Prime looked like a ball of rust spinning in space. 5 minutes to landing, Captain Lisa Hayes called from the front of the ship. She was a tough woman with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Remember, we are here to talk peace, not fight wars. Jake nodded and secured his medical bag. He had been a medic for 3 years now, but this was his first time on an alien world. The human ship UES Horizon had brought them here to meet with the local rulers. The planet was torn apart by war, and Earth wanted to help make peace. Dr. Peter Kane, the team's alien expert, looked nervous. He was a thin man with glasses who knew more about alien biology than anyone else on the ship. The Valari are very different from us, he said quietly. They have crystal-like blood and can live for hundreds of years, but they are also very proud and do not trust outsiders easily. The ship landed with a loud thud on the rocky ground. Through the window, Jake could see tall, blue-skinned beings waiting for them. The Valari looked like humans, but were taller, and had silver markings on their skin that seemed to glow softly. Their eyes were large and completely black. Captain Hayes opened the door and stepped out first. Jake followed with his medical bag, feeling the hot, dry air hit his face. The gravity was lighter here, making each step feel like a small bounce. The Valari leader stepped forward. She was tall and graceful, wearing robes that changed color in the light. "I am Princess Zarathel," she said in perfect English. Her voice was musical and strange. "Welcome to our world." Jake stared at her. He had never seen anyone so beautiful, human, or alien. Her skin was pale blue like ice, and her silver markings moved like living things across her face and arms. "We are honored to meet you, Princess," Captain Hayes said with a formal bow. "We hope to help bring peace to your people." Princess Zarathel smiled, but Jake could see sadness in her dark eyes. "Peace is what we all want," she said, "but it is not easy to achieve. Come, we will show you to the meeting place." They walked across the desert toward a group of buildings made from red stone. Jake noticed that some of the structures were damaged, with walls blown apart and roofs caved in. This war had been going on for a long time. As they walked, Princess Zarathel explained the situation. "My people are divided," she said. "The old ways say we should never change, never trust outsiders. But I believe we must grow and learn from others if we want to survive." "What started the fighting?" Dr. Kane asked, pulling out a small device to record everything. "Fear," the princess said simply. "Fear of change, fear of losing our old traditions. General Kethmore leads those who want to keep things the same. He thinks contact with other species will destroy us." They reached the buildings and went inside, the largest one. The walls were covered with beautiful paintings that seemed to move and change as Jake watched them. The Valari technology was unlike anything he had ever seen. The meeting went well at first. Princess Zarathel and her advisors listened carefully as Captain Hayes explained how Earth could help. They talked about trade, medicine, and ways to end the fighting. But then the attacks began. The first explosion shook the building so hard that everyone fell to the ground. Jake heard the sound of weapons firing outside and people screaming. Through the windows, he could see aircraft flying overhead, dropping bombs on the buildings around them. "We are under attack," Princess Zarathel said, her calm voice now filled with worry. "General Kethmore has found us." Captain Hayes grabbed her radio. "Horizon, this is Hayes. We need immediate pickup. The meeting site is under attack." But the radio only made static sounds. Something was blocking their signals. "We have to get out of here," Dr. Kane said, his face pale with fear. They ran toward the back of the building as more explosions rocked the area. Jake could hear the sound of alien weapons getting closer. Princess Zarathel led them through hallways filled with smoke and dust. They reached a back door just as the front of the building exploded in a ball of fire. The force threw everyone to the ground. Jake felt something hot hit his back, but he kept moving. Outside, the attack was getting worse. Jake could see Valeri soldiers fighting each other in the streets. Some wore red armor and some wore blue, but they all looked the same to him. "The transport ships!" Captain Hayes shouted over the noise. "We have to reach the landing area." They ran across the open ground, trying to avoid the fighting. Princess Zarathel stayed close to the humans, using her knowledge of the area to guide them away from the worst battles. They were almost to the ships when Jake heard a sound that made his blood freeze. It was a high, whistling noise that got louder and louder. "Incoming!" Captain Hayes yelled. The missile hit the ground right next to them. The explosion was so bright that Jake could not see anything for several seconds. When his vision cleared, he found himself lying on his back, his ears ringing. He sat up slowly and looked around. Captain Hayes was getting to her feet nearby, blood running from a cut on her forehead. Dr. Kane was sitting against a rock, holding his arm and looking dazed. But Princess Zarathel was not moving. Jake crawled over to where she lay. The beautiful alien princess was very still, her silver markings no longer glowing. There was a strange green liquid pooling around her body. "No," Jake whispered, checking for a pulse. But Valerie hearts were different from human hearts, and he did not know where to look. Dr. Kane stumbled over, still holding his injured arm. "It's poison," he said, looking at the green liquid. "Some kind of toxin in the weapon. It attacks their crystal blood system." "Can we save her?" Jake asked. Dr. Kane shook his head. "We don't have the right medicine. Even if we did, I don't know." Enough about Valari biology. Jake looked down at the dying princess. She had been trying to help her people find peace. She had welcomed the humans even when it put her in danger. And now she was dying because of it. He made a decision that would change everything. "Maybe human blood will work," he said, pulling out his medical kit. "Jake, no," Dr. Kane said, grabbing his arm. "Human blood could kill her faster. We don't know how our biology will react with theirs." But Jake was already preparing the transfusion equipment. "She's dying anyway," he said. "At least this gives her a chance." Captain Hayes tried to stop him too, but Jake had already inserted the needle into his arm. The red human blood flowed through the tube toward the alien princess. "This is crazy," Dr. Kane said. Jake watched his blood enter Princess Zarathel's body. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her silver markings began to glow brighter than before. Her eyes opened, and she looked up at him with surprise and wonder. "What did you do?" she whispered. Jake smiled, feeling suddenly very tired. "I gave you what I could," he said. Neither of them knew that this simple act of kindness would change both of their species forever.